Humanity and Firewatch are fantastic games, but for all my fellow completionists out there, I like to measure games by a different metric. How good are they to complete? In this video, I'll be showing you how to get the last couple hardest achievements for both games to help you decide whether it's worth going the whole way or not. At the risk of sounding like a philosopher, first we're going to look at Humanity. What starts as a fairly straightforward Lemmings-like slowly reinvents itself over the course of its campaign into something more akin to totally accurate battle simulator, complete with giant clashes between endless legions of lightsaber and laser pistol wielding armies. While earlier levels remain much calmer and more manageable as your ethereal Shiba Inu can zoom ahead of the procession and correct mistakes, later ones are more restrictive and traditionally puzzle-like by preventing you from issuing new commands once you begin ushering in the masses. Somehow, the developers even managed to implement stealth missions and boss fights towards the end, to varying degrees of success. What remains consistent, however, is the profoundness of the many working together as one, as the ongoing streams of people seamlessly transform into an unstoppable force when focused on a specific objective, like a river carving through rock. In terms of achievements, the main ones you'll need to work towards are Goldie God, for collecting every Goldie, or as I like to call them, Oscars, and Wonderdog, which is for unlocking all 7 Wonders achievements. Goldie God is pretty self-explanatory and not too taxing, so I will leave you to work those out for yourself, since that's half the challenge of the whole game. Which leaves us with the Wonders. The first Wonder asks you to beat 3 towers with all Goldies while only using 2 switches. As you can see, one of these platforms is entirely unnecessary for collecting all 3 Goldies, so just make sure you avoid having anyone step on this switch at the bottom of the right hand tower, and that should pop for you no problem. The second Wonder asks you to beat Dropbox without a single person perishing. So the first thing you want to do is set up a nice little loop in the bottom area so no one wanders off the sides, but also so that there's a continuous stream of people pressing down on the switch so that the travelators will stay off. Then grab no more than a dozen people to jump up to the top area and push down the cube and reintegrate with the loop. Then, change the commands so the switch is released, which then lets the cube move and act as a platform, and make sure to add a jump command on there, because bloody hell did I cut it fine there, and hopefully nobody fell off the edge when you weren't looking, and that should be the second one done and dusted. The third Wonder asks you to beat Missing Link without using one of the branching commands. Notice that you are given 2 branching commands, so we can only use one of them. The key here is to understand how you need to manipulate the pushable blocks with a pre-programmed set of commands, since this is one of the levels where you can't change anything once the level has started. The branching command has to be used on the raised platform at the very end, so don't be tempted to use it to help you maneuver the blocks, and otherwise that should have it all figured out. If you need to observe the exact solution, here it is. The fourth Wonder asks you to beat the last straw without a single person perishing. The trick to getting this one is to realise that the way the level is set up allows you to divide your people into 4 distinct groups, which can then be assigned their own individual task in order to help you save time before the others catch up to you and start fighting with them. Crucially, one group needs to make a beeline straight for the switch at the very back of the level, and the other groups can then catch up by climbing straight up the ladder, which the others will use to try and close the distance. Make sure to wait until every person has made it before exiting the level, and that should be another one scratched off your list. The fifth wonder asks you to beat Hill to Die On after destroying all the others' gates. This is the one which you may have gotten by playing normally anyway, but in case you haven't, all you need to do is to have your people aggressively push back against the others. The most effective strategy that I came up with is using the fans and the float to have pistol wielding people jumping over the hill and then walking back up again afterwards, which is enough to push back the others. Pretty simple stuff to snag the fifth wonder. The sixth wonder asks you to beat Grid Runner without leaving a single person behind. Patience is virtuous here, so hopefully you've had many platform games teach you to stick around and just wait for the windows of opportunity, winding your way back and forward, making sure that you pick up every person as you go. Make note that you can use this central corridor as a breakpoint by running back and forward, since there is no boulder that rolls through the middle, and I'm not 100% sure whether you need to have the goldies with you as well for this to count for the achievement, but it's not too hard to nip in and grab them both as you go, so just do all that and that should be the sixth wonder. Oh, and don't do what I did here, which is completely stop paying attention and fall off the side. Just unnecessary. The seventh wonder asks you to beat central processing without retrying and keeping your placed commands. All this really means is that if you do muck it up and need to restart the level, just make sure that you choose the option which wipes all the commands out, and you just have to start from scratch, which isn't actually that big of a deal in one of these combat levels, since you have to be quite reactive anyway. And with that done, that should be both the seventh wonder and the Wonderdog achievement for you. After that, you might have a couple residual achievements left to mop up, but you're pretty much home dry now, so we will move straight on to the final rating for humanity. The achievements here ensure that you've fully understood and dived into every nook and cranny without any needlessly grindy or tedious affairs, so I see no reason why I can't give humanity a fully deserved 5 out of 5. Whisked away from the cold scenery and logic-driven puzzles of humanity, we now go to the breathtaking sights and sounds of Firewatch. Having scooped up 13 awards when it was released almost 10 years ago, Firewatch is well worth going back to as a landmark title from the annals of the indie gaming scene. At its flaming heart is the emergent connection between two unremarkable people. Even the most enclosed and protective among us will naturally open up to those around them over time, even more so when said time is spent over the course of a few months out in the sticks. By carefully managing a branching path of dialogue options between the game's leads Henry and Delilah, the developers subtly weave player choice into determining what kind of relationship the two leads will develop, with clever little payoffs along the way. By firmly centering the game's scope around this relationship, Firewatch avoids many of the pitfalls, or in this case rock slides, that other games fall into with player choice, where the game can't narratively or mechanically deliver the level of agency tantalizingly promised to the player. Building upon such strong roots, the rest of the game experience is elevated despite some bare-bones gameplay and buggy interactions. The sprawling vistas of an untouched countryside are warm and inviting to soak up the vibe in, along with Henry. Although stopping to take in the finer details will reveal a few too many floating graphical elements and flattened textures by modern standards, even for an indie game. A compelling little mystery spices up the slice-of-life emotional core of the story, and even those that indulge in dawdling will easily roll credits within less than 10 hours. Do be aware of a slightly steep price, which even after all this time still feels a little high given how little game you are actually getting. Now, unfortunately, Firewatch's achievements are notoriously buggy. The general consensus among the game's forums is that minimizing the game while it's running seems to prevent achievements from popping for whatever reason, so in order to prevent this, whenever you're close to a point where you should receive an achievement, make a manual save before continuing. That way, If an achievement does bug out, you can just close the game, restart, and hopefully that should fix any issues. With that said, the actual achievements aren't that difficult to get. Half of them are just progress points for the story, but the other half are tied to specific optional encounters which you can run into. The first one is Love Turts, which is awarded for adopting a pet turtle, which randomly spawns somewhere in the game. Now, I seem to have gotten lucky in that the turtle has spawned right by one of the storage boxes, so I didn't have to go hunting it down. What I would say is keep your eye out for it as you play along normally, and if you haven't found it by the time you've got your hands on the axe, I would then advise opening up the guide, which I will link in the description below, which lists every possible location that the turtle can spawn in, and you can methodically go through each one in order to find it. The next achievement is Shutterbug, which simply asks you to use up all the photos on the disposable camera, which you can't miss. So either just spam the camera when you first receive it, or make liberal use of it as you go through the story.
What's in this cave down here?
Next up is Bee Plot, which is given when stung by a bee. You will find the bee just inside the chain link fence in a small box with Tahiti written on it. When you open up the box and trigger the scripted cutscene, that will have you stung by the bee. The last two achievements that I'm highlighting here are in pretty close proximity of each other. That's in between the cave area and the broken overhead cable. You'll need the axe before you can get to a small area and pick up the cassette tape, which earns you old Shoshone. And to the east of here, past an old outhouse, you'll find a log cabin. In the basement, there's a stove in the corner, which when interacted with will cause you to be assaulted and earn you the life and times of Raccoon Carter. Note that you cannot get this in day, I think, 2 the first time that you go into this area, so you might as well wait until you've got the axe and do both at the same time. And that's everything, which is a really bare bones list. Granted, Firewatch is a very laid back game and more invested in its emotional core, so it doesn't really need to have anything particularly intense for achievements. With that said though, I was surprised to find that there's nothing for opening all the supply boxes, which fills in all the paths on the map, so that feels like a slight missed opportunity. But the real crime here is just how buggy these achievements are. I had to repeat some days 3 or 4 times just to try and get them. Even the ones that should pop every time without any problem were just not happening for me. Maybe you'll get lucky and it's okay, but it was a bit frustrating, and given how long it's been since the release, I highly doubt that this is ever going to change, so I will be tough but fair and dock a point here. So overall, that is a 4 out of 5 for Firewatch.
It's hot.
If you've enjoyed this video, thank you very much for making it all the way to the end, and go ahead and click some of those buttons for me if you did. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one, where I'll be completing another couple of games and letting you know whether it was worth doing so.
Clothes. I don't really think about it.
Oh, come on.
I got a sweatshirt I like. Good jacket I got at the Buckle Barn.
Ooh, I love the Buckle Barn.
Just one of those brown ones, you know?
I do. Now tell me about your face. I'm looking at you across the bar. What do I see?